Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. Thanks for spending moments with Myra. I'm going to read chapter 5 and 6 in Make Your Bed. So I think I did chapter 1 and then chapter 2. I did 3 and 4 together, and now I'm doing 5 and 6. I am enjoying this book, but I do have to tell you that reading is a challenge for me because, my eyes are bad and the words be running into each other sometimes. So if you see me stuttering or, not pronouncing the word right, that's what I see. So, but I'm trying to get through this book. It's kind of motivating, very, It's a lot of lessons in this book. So I like it. Yeah. I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you're able to relax. So let's get to it. Again, thanks for your time. And thanks for spending moments with Myra. I'm on to chapter 5 of Make Your Bed. If you want to change the world, don't be afraid of the circus. The waves off Coronado Island were choppy, the small white caps slapping us in the face as we side-stroked back towards the beach. As usual, my swim buddy and I struggled to keep up with the rest of the SEAL training class. The instructors on the safety boat were yelling for us to pick up the pace, as it seemed the harder we swam, the further we fell behind. My swim buddy that day was Isaiah Mark Thomas. Like me, Mark had received his commission through the Reserve Office Training Corps, ROTC. He was a graduate of the Virginia Military Institute, one of the best long-distance runner in the class. In SEAL training, your swim buddy was the person you rely on to have your back. It was your swim buddy who you were physically tied to on the underwave dive. It was your swim buddy who were partnered with on the long swims. Your swim buddy helped you study, kept you motivated, and became your closest ally throughout training. And that swim buddy, if one of you failed any event, both of you suffered the consequences. It was the instructor's way of reinforcing the importance of teamwork. As we finished the swim and crossed onto the beach, a SEAL instructor was waiting for us. Drop down, the instructor yelled. This was the command to fall into the push-up position. Back straight arm, fully extended, and head up. You two call yourself officers? There was no point in answering. We both knew we would continue. Officer in the SEAL team led the way. They don't come in last on the swims. They don't embarrass their class. The instructor moved us around, kicking sand in our face as he circled. I don't think you gentlemen are going to make it. I don't think you have what it takes to be SEAL officers. Pulling a small black notebook from his back pocket, he looked at us with disgust and jotted something in his book. You two just made the circus list. He shook his head. You'll be lucky if you survive another week. The circus, it was the last thing either Mark or I wanted. The circus was held every afternoon at the end of training. The circus was another 2 hours of additional calisthenics combined with non-stop harassment by the SEAL combat veterans who wanted only strong to survive the training. If you failed to meet the standard of any of that day calisthenics, the obstacle course, the time run, or the swims, your name was on the list. In the eye of the instructor, you were a failure. What made the circus so feared by the student was not just the additional pain, but also the knowledge that the day after the circus, you would be exhausted from the extra workout and so fatigued that you would fail to meet the standard again. Another circus would follow, then another and another. It was a death spiral, a cycle of failure that caused many students to quit the training. As the rest of the students completed their day event, Mark and I, along with several others, assembled on the asphalt grinding to begin another day session of calisthenics. Because we had come in last on the swim, the instructor had tailored the circuit, the circus, just for us that day. Flutter kicks, lots and lots of flutter kicks. The flutter kicks were designed to strengthen your abdominal and thighs so you could power your way through the long open ocean swims. They were also designed to break you. The flutter kick exercise calls for you to lie on your back with legs extended directly in front of you and your hands behind your back, your hands behind your head as the instructor counted repetition. You alternate moving your legs up and down in a kicking motion. At no time during the exercise were you allowed to bend your knees. Bending your knees was considered weakness among frogmen. The circus was punishing hundreds of flutters, kicks, as well as push-up, sit-up, and 8-count bodybuilding. By the time the sun went down, Mark and I could barely move. Failure had a price. The next day brought more calisthenics. Another run, another obstacle course, another swim, and unfortunately, another circus. More sit-ups, more push-ups, and a lot more flutter kicks. But as the circuses continued, a funny thing happened. Our swims got better, and Mark and I began to move up in the pack. The circus, which had started as a punishment for failure, was making us stronger, faster, and more confident in the water. While other students quit, unable to handle the occasional failure and the pain it brought, Mark and I were determined not to allow the circus to be us. As training was coming to an end, there was one final open ocean swim, a 5-miler off the coast of San Clemente Island. Completing it, the allowable time was essential to graduating from the SEAL training. The water was bitterly cold as we jumped off the pier into the ocean. 15 swim pairs entered the water and began long trek out of the small bay around the peninsula and over the kelp beds. After about 2 hours, the swim pairs were so spread out you couldn't tell where you were in the pack. 4 hours into the swim, numb, exhausted, and on the verge of hypothermia, Mark Thomas and I crossed the beach. There waiting at the surf edge was the instructor. "Drop down," he yelled. My hands and feet were so cold I couldn't feel the sand beneath my fingers and toes. With my head straining to keep upright, all I could see was the instructor boots as he walked around Mark and me. "Once again, you two officers have embarrassed your class." Another set of boots appeared in the view, and then another. Several instructors were surrounding us. "You have made all your teammates look bad." He paused, recovered. "Gentlemen," as Mark and I got to our feet, we looked around the beach and suddenly realized we were the first swim pair to finish. "You embarrassed them, all right," the instructor smiled. "The second pair isn't even in sight." Mark and I turned to look towards the ocean, and sure enough, there was no one in view. "Well done, gentlemen. It looks like all that extra pain and suffering paid off." The instructor Paul stepped over and shook our hands. "I'll be honored to serve with you when you get to the teams." We had made it. The long swim was the final tough event of training. Several days later, Mark and I graduated. Mark went on to have a distinguished career in the SEAL team, and we remain close friends to this day. In life, you'll face a lot of circuses. You will pay for your failures, but if you let those failures teach you and strengthen you, then you'll be prepared to handle life's toughest moments. July 1983 was one of those tough moments. As I stood before the commander officer, I thought my career as a Navy SEAL was over. I had just been relieved of my SEAL squadron, fired for trying to change the way my squadron was organized, trained, and conducted mission. There were some magnificent officers that enlisted. Men in the organization, some of the most professional warriors I had ever been around. However, much of the culture was still rooted in the Vietnam era. and I thought it was time for a change. As I was to find out, change is never easy, particularly for a person to change. Fortunately, even though I was fired, the commanding officer allowed me to transfer to another SEAL team. But my reputation as a SEAL officer was severely damaged. Everywhere I went, other officers and enlisted men knew I had failed. And every day there were whispers and subtle reminders that maybe I wasn't up to the task of being a SEAL. At that point in my career, I had two options: quit and move on to civilian life, which seemed like the logical choice in light of my recent officer fitness report, or weather the storm and prove to others and myself that I was a good SEAL officer. I chose latter. Soon after being fired, I was given a second chance, an option to deploy overseas as the officer in charge of SEAL platoon. Most of the time, the overseas deployment, we were in remote locations, isolated and on our own. I took advantage of those opportunities to show that I could still lead. When you live in close quarters with 12 SEALs, there isn't anywhere to hide. They know if you are giving 100% on the morning workout. They see you when you first line up, jump out of the airplane, and last in line to get the chow. They watch you clean your weapon, check your radio, read your intelligence, and prepare your mission briefs. They know when you have worked all night preparing for tomorrow's training. As months after months of overseas deployment wore on, I used my previous failure as motivation to outwork, out-hustle, and outperform everyone in the platoon. I sometimes fell short of being the best, but I never fell short of giving my best. In time, I regained the respect of the men. Several years later, I was selected to command a SEAL team of my own. Eventually, I will go on to command all the SEALs of the West Coast. By 2003, I found myself in a combat in Iraq, Afghanistan. Now that I am one-star admiral leading troops in the war zone, every decision I made had its consequences. Over the next several years, I stumbled often. But for every failure, for every mistake, there were hundreds of successes. Hostages rescued, suicide bombers stopped, pirates captured, terrorists killed, and countless lives saved. I realized that the past failure had strengthened me, taught me that no one is immune from mistakes. True leaders must lead from their failures. Use the lessons to motivate them and not be afraid to try again or make the next tough decision. You can avoid the circus. At some point, we all make the list. Don't be afraid of the circus. Chapter 6. You must dare greatly. If you want to change the world, slide down an obstacle head first. Standing at the edge of a 30-foot tower, I grabbed the thick nylon rope. One end of the rope was attached to the tower, and the other end anchored on the ground to the pole, 100 feet away. I was halfway through the seal obstacle course, and I was on the record pace, swinging my legs over the top of the line and holding on for dear life. I began to inch my way off the platform. My body hung underneath the rope, and with a caterpillar-like motion, I slowly made my way foot by foot to the end. As I reached to the end, I released my grip on the line, dropped into a soft sand, and ran to the next obstacle. The other students in my class were yelling encouragement, but I could hear the seal instructor calling out the minutes. I had lost lots of time on the slide for my life. My possum-style technique of negotiation, the long rope was just too slow, but somehow I couldn't bring myself to slide down the rope head first. Going head first off the tower using a method called commando style was much faster, but also much riskier. You were less stable on the top of the rope than hanging underneath. If you fell and injured yourself, you would be washed out of the class. I crossed the finish line with a disappointing time. As I doubled over, trying to catch my breath, a grizzled old Vietnam with highly polished boots and a heavily starched green uniform hung over me. "Where are you going to?" "Mr. Mack," he said with an unmistakable tone of contempt. "The obstacle course is going to beat you every time unless you start taking some risk." 1 week later, I pushed my fears aside, mounted to the top of the rope, and thrust my body head down the slide for life. As I crossed the finish line in a personal best, I could see the old Vietnam SEAL nodding approval. It was a simple lesson to overcome your anxieties and trust in your ability to get the job done. The lesson will serve me well in the years to come. It was Iraq, 2004. The voice on the obstacle end of the radio was calm, but had an unmistakable sense of urgency. The 3 hostages we were searching for had been located. Terrorists were holding them in the wall compound of the outskirts of Baghdad. Unfortunately, intelligence indicated that terrorists were about to move the men, and we had to act quickly. The Army Lieutenant Colonel in charge of the rescue mission informed me that we would have to conduct a dangerous daylight raid. To make matters worse, the only way to be successful was to land 3 Black Hawk helicopters carrying the asphalt force. In the middle of the small compound, we talked through the other tactical options, but it was clear the colonel was right. It was always to conduct a rescue mission at night, when the elements of surprise was on your side. But this was a fleeting opportunity, and if we didn't act now, the hostages would be moved and possibly killed. I approved the mission within minutes. The rescue force had boarded the 3 Black Hawk helicopter and was on its way to the compound. High above the Black Hawk, another helicopter was providing video surveillance back to our headquarters. I watched in silence as the 3 helicopters skimmed across the desert, just a few feet away from the ground, hid their approach. Inside the open courtyard, I could see the man armed with an automatic weapon, moving in, out of the building, seemingly prepared to leave. The halos were 5 minutes out of all I could do from my headquarters was listen to the internal communication as the rescue force made final preparations. This was not the first hostage rescue I had overseen, nor would it be the last. But it was clearly the most daring and light of need to gain surprise by landing inside the compound. While the pilots from the Army Aviation Unit were the best in the world, this was still a high-risk mission. 3 helicopters with blade extending beyond 60 feet were going to land in the space with only inches to spare. Adding to the level of difficulties was 8-foot high brick wall that surrounded the compound, forcing the pilots to dramatically alter their approach. It was going to be hard landing, and over the radio I could hear the rescue force preparing for the impact. From the overhead surveillance, I could see the helicopter's final approach. The first aircraft flew flat and level, and then it crossed over the walls. The halo flared upward, settling into the tiny courtyard. Immediately, the rescue force exited the Black Hawk and began surging into the building. The second halo, right off the tail of the first, landed within few feet of his companion. Dirt from the downwash of the helicopter caused a cloud of dust to encircle the landing area. As the third halo approached the compound, a giant plume of dust temporarily blinded the pilot. The front of the third halo inches over the wall, but the rear will clip the 8-foot high barricade, throwing bricks everywhere. With no room to spare, the pilot forced the halo to the ground with a thud. But everyone inside was unharmed. Minutes later, I received word that all the hostages were safe. Within 30 minutes of the rescue force and the freed men were on their way back to safety. The gamble had paid off. Over the course of the next decade, I would come to realize that assuming risk was typical. Our Special Operation Force, they always push the limits to themselves and their machine in order to be successful. In many ways, this is what set them apart from everyone else. However, contrary to what outsiders saw, the risk was usually calculated, thoughtful, and well planned. Even if it was spontaneous, the operation knew their limit, but believed in themselves enough to try. Throughout my career, I always had great respect for the British Special Air Force Service. The famed SAS, the ASA model Who dares win? The motto was so widely admired that even moments before Bin Laden raid, my commander quoted it to the SEALs preparing for the mission. To me, the motto was more than about how British Special Forces operated and as a unit. It was about how each of us should approach our lives. Life is a struggle, and the potential of failure is ever present. But those who live in fear of failure or hardship or embarrassment will never achieve their potential. Without pushing your limits, without occasionally sliding down the rope head first, without daring great, you will never know what it is truly possibly in your life. That's it.